Wow.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's 10 a.m. Welcome to our program today. This is our continuation of our 2025 masterclass series entitled Thinking About Retirement or Escape, in this case, to Portugal or in Portugal. Before we get down to business, a few of those quick housekeeping items. Please make sure that your audio or video is muted. Most important. The only people on screen should be our guest and me. You can submit questions through the chat button at the bottom at any time. I'll keep an eye on them, and we'll be happy to throw those questions to Michael as we're chatting. And I don't care how minor or picky you in the questions are, pop them in there. And then again, a question I've been getting from a lot of people, I know realtors particularly are pulled away with last minute client crises. Yes, we are recording the Zoom program. Yes, this afternoon you will be receiving a link from us to our YouTube channel where today's recording will be posted. And if you don't see it, it comes out via Eventbrite. If you don't find it, it may be residing in your spam folder or your junk file. So look out for that. So why today's program? Well, astute trend watchers are noticing burgeoning interest in primary and/or secondary home ownership in Europe, specifically the Iberian Peninsula, home to Portugal and Spain. And as any experienced travel consultant would advise, Portugal is the place to be right now. It's hot. Expats rave about the food, the people, the quality of life, not to mention some physical similarities to San Francisco, particularly the bridge there. So today we deliver an informational program about Portuguese lifestyle, including the nitty gritty. And we will get into a lot of nitty gritty stuff. Buying a home, mortgages, home rental, affordability, cultural issues, medical, health, etc., etc. We've secured an expert familiar with both the Bay Area and starting afresh in Portugal, who will share his expertise, knowledge, and experience about life in this new country that he and his partner now call home, which is, of course, Portugal. So about our guest, after a successful 13-year career as one of San Francisco's top producing real estate agents, brokerage owner, team owner, and city ambassador, Michael Minson left that all behind in 24 and moved his business, his husband, and their two dogs to Lisbon, Portugal, to do it all over again. He and his team help clients purchase, sell, and lease real estate in the greater Lisbon metro area. And as a recovering American, he brings a helpful perspective of what real estate is like and not like in Portugal compared to the US. Michael, welcome. It's a pleasure to have
Thank
you
you,
with us
Al.
today. And we've got a great turnout for you today. So let's get down to business. Give us quick 60 seconds. Tell us about your practice in Portugal.
Thanks, Al. Thanks, everybody. It's great to see you. I love coming back to talk about talk to so many San Franciscans, Californians, folks in the US about what we've done here, and it's pretty cool. I was just telling Alf, it's been 9 months now since we moved here, 8 months since I moved my business. I ran a team, some of you know, a Level Up group in San Francisco for 13 years. David Juarez and team have taken that over. I'm more of a coach for them now, but now I'm full-time focused on Portugal, still with Keller Williams. I was able to move over pretty seamlessly, relatively seamlessly. I ran a team in San Francisco, anywhere from 13 to 20 agents, depending on what was going on at the time of at that year. And now I've joined a team. So I went from team leader now to kind of low man on the totem pole. I'll tell you, it's great. The benefits of being on a team are incredible. I know real estate. I know how to talk to clients, buyers, sellers, how to make a deal happen, but the transaction itself is wildly different here. Systems are totally different, rules, laws, everything, customs. So being on part of a team has been incredibly helpful. This was a picture of my first day at the office, so I thought it was good to share.
Michael, why did you make the move to Portugal?
I made the move. We made the move. It started probably 5 years ago. We started looking at where would we want to retire. We looked on Google where are the best places for Americans to retire. Costa Rica was top of the list. Mexico was number 2 or 1 or something, and Portugal was number 3. We went to Costa Rica. We liked it. It was nice. Wouldn't want to move there. Mexico, same thing. And then we went to Portugal, and then we went back to Portugal a second time, and we decided, wow, this is pretty great. And then we started talking to expats. There's a very vibrant expat community here. And several of our colleagues from San Francisco, Britton Jackson moved here 2 years before us, and Dottie Hopkins from Napa moved here a year before us. And their consistent messaging was, I wish we would have done 10 years sooner. And that kind of resonated in our heads, or we heard it more and more and more. And so that kind of gave us the impetus to just look at where we were. I'm 52, my husband's 45. We're not getting any younger, but we're also not so old that we can't move and restart a business. So we thought it was a good time. And we made the decision 2 years earlier, or 1 year earlier, and then we moved in December, right after the election. Didn't really have anything to do with the election, but it felt like kind of serendipitous timing.
Why Portugal and not Spain?
Well, Portugal, I like better. I like Portugal better. I think they're both great countries. It's all one peninsula. If you were looking at it as an alien coming in, it would be hard to see the differences. They will tell you they're 100% different, right? A Portuguese person, a Spanish person will tell you that there's no similarities whatsoever, but there are a lot of similarities. I think, nuts and bolts, Portugal's a little cheaper. It's a little easier to get by in English. And Cristiano Ronaldo's from here, so that's a big plus. I think Spain's
Okay.
great. It's maybe a little more, it's a little closer to the rest of Europe, borders France. It's bigger, so there's more things to do there. And it's more of a Mediterranean lifestyle. So I don't think anyone is better than the other, but that's why we chose Portugal.
So just a sort of an overview, headline opinion. If you had to do it all over again, knowing what you went through, would you do it again?
Oh yeah,
The
absolutely.
journey, no question about that. But was
No
it
question about it.
harder or easier than you thought it would be to make that transition?
Easier. The
Easier.
hardest part was making the decision. That was the absolute hardest part. There's a lot of fear that goes into the decision. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of doubt. Um, I had a business. I had a very successful business. We had multiple properties, and we had to unwind all of that, relationships, family, all that stuff. So it's not a spur of the moment decision by any stretch, but it's once you get the ball rolling, it becomes very task based. And once you get that emotional decision made, um, the rest of it happens. Buying the plane ticket, the one-way plane ticket, that was significant. Selling our favorite property up in Guerneville, that was very significant. Once those two decisions were made, then it was like, all right, let's GTFO. We got to get out of here. Let's get the show on the road.
Let's talk about the sort of outward migration, because I'm hearing it everywhere I turn here in the United States. People of a certain age group saying it's time we're thinking of, et cetera, et cetera. In terms of movement to the Bay Area, or from the Bay Area, and from Southern Cal as well, for that matter, what are the signs and symptoms? Are they coming for retirement? Do they want a vacation home? Is it cheaper cost of living? Is it a more laid back lifestyle? Is it the political upheaval in the States? What seem to be the prominent motives for people wanting to make the move?
I think
Is there a thread?
all of the above. I think it's a very big decision. I think, the buckets are kind of retirees that are looking for a lower cost of living, high quality of life, maybe a new adventure. Really reduce the cost basis is a big driver, a huge driver, especially people from California. I was paying $22,000 a year on property taxes for our home in Bernal Heights, and here our new house is going to be, I think, 2,000 a year for property taxes. And so that's a big difference when you're looking at, retirement income and reducing your cost base. There's a sense of adventure, people, you're in Europe now and you can really go anywhere. You're 2 hours from every major capital city, Rome, Paris, London, Barcelona, or Amsterdam are all within an hour or two flight, Morocco even. And so it's a very different lifestyle. And then we get people that are maybe fearful for their family. I've had several clients that have had a either a very close call or a too close for comfort situation with violence, crime, gun crime. They've got kids, they're concerned for their kids. A surprising thread of that I've seen. And then there's a lot of more recently, just political frustration, to put it mildly. A lot of folks are coming here because they're just kind of sick of what's happening in the U.S. And I'm pretty direct with those folks. I'm making sure they caution them that you're not running from something. They make sure you're doing a move like this so that you're running to something,
Yeah.
right? Because it won't last, right? That news follows you everywhere. You still hear it here. You can't escape it. And so I think that's an important
And to
conversation.
that point, Michael, is there a group that becomes disenchanted with life
Sure.
overseas and wants to return?
Sure.
Have you had personal experience with that?
I know of people, they get disgruntled, they get frustrated, they thought they looked at this move from rose-colored glasses, that it was all going to be, pastel donatas by the river every day. And, your life is still your life. You pick up your life from wherever it was and you move it here, your problems come with you. You don't leave them back home. And so, the cost of living is low here, but so is income. And so if you come here to work and you expect you're going to make 100, 150, $250,000 like you were making wherever you were, that's a tough order. Minimum wage here is $850 a month. And a huge percentage of the population is on that. So that translates for visitors and expats into, wow, everything's so cheap. The downside is that if you come here to work and you're not connected to a foreign company that you already have a foot in the door when you get here, it's a shocker. And so that, I think, the income disparity is probably the biggest challenge that I hear from folks, that it's tough to make a living.
I've always said to my wife, Debbie, the one frustration I would have is if I was in Portugal or Italy, is I can't go to Home Depot and get a replacement bulb in 3 seconds. It's shallow of me, but it's the reality of life.
We do have Leroy Merlin. Leroy Merlin, that's our Home Depot equivalent.
That's your Home Depot. Basic demographics, Michael, is there a core or a thread here in terms of age, marital status, employment status, household income? Are you seeing a thread outside of expats?
Well, most of my clients, I joined a team that focuses on expats. So most of my clients are expats, whether from the United States or Canada or, another European country. I haven't actually, I have one Portuguese client, actually. I just met her last week. So that's now changed, but most of my clients are expats. I would say a good chunk of them are retirees. I have a teacher moving here. She's she got some kind of contract to teach in Lisbon. I have another family that's moving here. She's getting her master's degree at University of Lisbon. So I would say the majority of them are either retirees or digital nomads. So if they've got a US job and they're allowed to work anywhere, so they're going to move over here and see what that's like. Digital nomad visa allows you to work there's a short term and a long term. The long term is for, I think, a 1 year, and then that can renew for 2 years, and it can get you a path to citizenship. The short term, I think, is less than a year, and it is not a path to citizenship. So I see both of those. Those are the big buckets, though.
Okay, we're getting a lot of questions coming in here, Michael, and I'm keeping my eye on them. We'll probably cover most of those questions as we continue our conversation, but we'll leave a little bit of time at the end just in case. Pardon my ignorance of Portugal. I've obviously followed a lot of travelogues on Lisbon. Size of Lisbon, by the way, Metro Lisbon, if you want to use that terminology, how big?
It's about the similar size of San Francisco. About
Okay.
3 million people in the greater metro. It's very similar to San Francisco,
And you
geography-wise
live
and population-wise.
and you live in Lisbon itself.
I do. I live in the west side of Lisbon.
And most of the expats coming into to Portugal to buy are heading to Lisbon, I assume. They're not going to other parts of the country.
Yeah, I think so Lisbon is right here in the country, and it's right in this more or less the center of the country. You can get to the
Right.
Algarve in 2.5 hours. You can get to Porto in 3 hours. You can get all the way to Spain in 3 hours. So it's a very easy place to home base. And these are the all the neighborhoods or the just some, they call them freguesias, but it's maybe like a collective of neighborhoods. They each have their own little micro government. And then Lisbon is here. The district of Lisbon is quite large. I think right now there's 14,000 Americans in Portugal, and 10,000 of those are in Lisbon. So it's highly concentrated here. And then second would be Porto is the next biggest city. And then the Algarve is a district. There's like probably 20 little towns or medium to little towns, probably 100, all along the coast here, where a lot of folks go to retire. A lot of golf courses, a lot of beautiful beaches. It's pretty gorgeous, but it's kind of like Florida. Lisbon might be more like Los Angeles weather-wise, and Porto might be more like Seattle or Portland weather-wise.
Gotcha. In terms of buyers coming in, Michael, property characteristics, that's obviously better value for the dollar is one vis-a-vis what we pay in San Francisco. What are they looking for? Ocean views, local charm. They want to be in the city center. They want replication of US lifestyle. They want something. What do they want?
Well, I guess it depends on who the buyer is, right? I think a lot of folks come here. They either want to, if they're retiring, they want to. If they're older and retiring, they might not want a house anymore. They might want a yard. They want a condo, all the amenities. They don't have to deal with anything. All the stuff's taken care of, and they want to be in the city center where they can walk to everything. Don't want a car. They may not want a car, but they want a grocery store nearby. They want the market and the restaurants and all that stuff. And most neighborhoods in Lisbon have all of that. There are very few parts of the city, and dare I say the country, where there are food deserts. There are grocery stores everywhere. My neighborhood in Campo de Rico, I think there's 30, at least 20 grocery stores within walking distance of like 10 blocks. It's a ridiculous number of grocery stores. And so that kind of quality of life is very easy. There's a vet, there's everything. There's an eye doctor. You don't have to go very far. But if you want like the beach lifestyle on the Silver Coast, or I got some slides here. So Lisbon's going to have all of the stuff. It's also very touristy, and so you get a lot of it's very busy in the summer. And there's some parts where you just don't want to go in the summer, like Sintra down here. It can be just too hectic. Porto, very similar, beautiful, beautiful city, a little smaller than Lisbon. It's not the capital. It's a little rainier, but it's probably my favorite city from just a gorgeousness perspective. It is absolutely beautiful. And they have the Douro Valley, which is kind of sort of like Sonoma, except it's a lot more hilly, but it's got that same wine vibe. And then the Algarve down south, very much a retiree vacation, Airbnb kind of lifestyle, golf, snorkeling, these incredible caves, very, very hot, lots of hotels, lots of Airbnbs for investing down here. They don't have very many restrictions on Airbnbs, unlike in Lisbon and Porto, where you can't buy an Airbnb, you can't turn a property into an Airbnb unless it's already one. And then the Silver Coast is pretty much from just north of Lisbon to just south of Porto. And there's dozens of cities along the way.
There's Nazaré,
yeah, this is Nazaré, where you got some of the
the
best surfing in the
100-foot.
world. Yeah, so there's a lot of options, and it is similar to California in that it's West Coast. You've got mountains on the east and the beach to the west. You've got lots of different microclimates all up and down. It's shaped very similarly. We've got the same very similar looking bridge. So for Californians, it actually feels very comfortable because it feels kind of familiar. And we hear that a lot.
Okay. Let's get into the nitty gritty of buying. I've made a decision. I'm going to come over. What Take me through the trials and tribulations, the process. Where do I get my information from? We're talking buying real estate now. Okay.
Yeah.
Where am I getting, if I want to do my research in the US first before I call you, or I arrive, where do I go? Is it websites? Is it brokerages, blogs? What is it? YouTube? Where do I go?
So there is not really a Zillow killer here. The closest thing we have is a website called Idealista. Idealista.pt is a specific one. There's also a Spain one, and it's kind of the closest thing that we have to search. It's pretty mediocre, and it doesn't have near the tools that we have in the US, but it has listings and it works just fine. The search process is the human side of real estate in Portugal is the exact same. Buyer wants to buy, seller wants to sell, you come to terms, you figure it out, and you agree, and then you proceed to close. Everything else is different. There's no MLS, there's no licensing with agents, there's no escrow. And so it's a very different process. Because of the way that there's no realtor association, and so agents are not bound by certain codes of ethics. And so the brokerage is licensed and they're responsible for supervising their agents, but that's 1 degree or more away from the actual consumer experience, and that accountability that we have as agents in the US is very different here. And so you get a lot of protectionist behaviors. You get a lot of what a seller may list their property with 10 agents, right? And so now you've got your listing, you've got 10 versions of the same listing, and it might have different prices, it might have different square meterage instead of square feet, different photos, and it's very confusing. You don't know who to call. The fact that there's no escrow also creates another level of differentiation. We still have attorneys review things. There's still somebody that's kind of keeping tabs on everybody. But you're not putting money in an escrow account when you pay your deposit. You're actually wiring it to or sending it to the seller before you close, and so that's very different. So we have to do a
Michael, quick
lot of.
question. Does everybody use a realtor? Are most of the transactions done through realtors or for sale by owners?
Both. I would say it's percentage-wise probably similar to the US.
US, okay.
Yeah, it's the same conversations around, the human side very much the same. You've got great realtors, you've got bad realtors, you've got sellers that want to do it on their own, and ones that want to trust a professional. That's all the same. But when you get into the transaction, it's really helpful. If you don't have a realtor for some reason, you definitely want to get an attorney to guide you through, because the contracts are all in Portuguese. All of the documents online are all in Portuguese. And so you want to make sure that you're understanding what you're signing. We bring a translator to the table at the signing, but there's a lot more trust involved.
Are there buyer's agents?
Yep.
There
Buyer's
are.
agents
Okay.
and listing agents. Yeah.
To what extent is there mortgage lending, like the
Mortgage is
US?
actually very similar. So depending on if you're what your risk profile is to the lender, just like in the US, they will give you different rates and terms and down payment requirements. So if you live in Lisbon and you work in Lisbon and you have income here, you're a resident, you're going to get better terms and a lower down payment requirement. And so that could be 10%, maybe 20%. You're going to get a more favorable rate because you're here, they can go grab you or whatever, and they can touch you, and it's more real. If you're in the US or another country and you're buying an investment property, they're going to require more down payment and might not give you as good of a rate. But when we talk about rates, rates are averaging 3% over here. So even if you're buying as an out-of-state and out-of-country investor, you're probably not going to pay more than 4%, if not 3.5% or so. And your down payment will be 20 to 30%. So coming from the US, where it's 7%, give or plus or minus, it's really great. It's a real good deal. Money is very cheap here.
Is the interest on that mortgage, is that mortgage interest tax deductible in Portugal as it is in the US?
Oh, I don't know that answer.
Okay,
I don't
fine.
have that answer.
The closing process, the disclosures, the contracts, the contingencies, the inspections, similar or different?
Wildly different. Wild West. There's no disclosures. There's rarely do Portuguese people anticipate inspections. I always recommend my clients do inspections just because it's more comfortable for everybody. I don't want anybody buying a lemon or feeling like there's a big surprise. But the seller doesn't have to disclose anything. They don't have to disclose there's, a crackhead neighbor, or that the dog barks all night long, or that my roof leaks on Tuesdays. They don't have to disclose any of that stuff. It's kind of a buyer beware situation. And so part of what we do on the legal side is make sure that this is the right seller. They're actually entitled to sell. They don't have any other liens or encumbrances, just like escrow would do. And then we review, we do the inspections to make sure that there aren't any hidden surprises that we don't know about. But it's unsettling at first until you go through it, and then you're like, oh, okay, you get to the same outcome, the same goal. It's also not a very litigious country. And so the amount of lawsuits is just not anywhere near like we have in the US.
So let me go back then. What are the buyer protections, if any?
So you build them into the process, right? So the legal review, there's the inspection process, and then the actual contract is a pretty strong contract. It's written up by both attorneys review it, the seller side and the buy side review it. But unlike in most U.S. states, there aren't forms. They're not standard contracts, and they're not as fast. So it can take anywhere from 7 to 10 days even to get a contract signed. So you submit an offer on email, you guys agree on the everything, price and terms, and then the listing agent goes off, scurries away and creates the contract with their attorney, and they send it to you, in 2 weeks, and then you sign it. And in that 2 week period, that's when you're doing your due diligence, right? That's when we're going over the property, we're looking at things, we're getting the loan figured out. Because when you sign the contract, you're pretty darn close to being non-contingent at that point. You've had period of time to work things out, figure out, is this the right property for you? And you know what you're getting. And then after that, it's just a matter of letting the finance process go through its course.
Okay, Michael, I want to the audience, yes, we are recording today's program. I said that right up front. It'll be posted to our YouTube channel this afternoon. You will receive an email from Eventbrite with a link that you can click on. Michael, go back. Let me stop right there. Then, if you were to provide headlines on the major differences between the process between the US and Portugal, they would be what? Headline form. In the process, major differences.
I mean, it's
more
everything.
Wild West.
It's everything. I mean, the contract is created. Each transaction creates its own unique contract. There's no escrow, and there's no disclosures.
Got it.
Buyer beware is more or less the mantra that we encourage our clients to be very, very eyes wide open, ask lots of questions. Let's poke at things. Let's make sure you're 100% comfortable. We'll ask the seller stuff. They'll generally answer us, and they're not usually evasive, but they're not required to disclose things like they are in most US states.
Is there a high degree of contracts falling out or deals falling out of action versus the US, or about the same?
Hard to say. There's no MLS, so we don't have statistics on that kind of stuff. So there's no sold data. You can't go and see what this house sold for, this house sold for. So you've got a lot of active inventory that you look at to see what prices are. That's why it really helps to work with an agent that has had a lot of deals, right? That's why I joined a team. We've got a ton of deals. So when we get a property and we're like, well, we think it's this price, and I can reference, 5 or 10 transactions that we've done that are similar. But there's no one source data like we have in the MLS to go and look all this stuff up. We have a lot of neighborhood averages. That's what we have, neighborhood averages.
Residency requirements.
To buy property
for the US, particularly for the US.
There are no residency requirements to buy property in Portugal. You need to have a tax ID number, which is easy to get, and you need to have a Portuguese bank account. And that's about it.
No minimum net worth, no minimum bank account.
You need to qualify for a loan if you're getting a loan, of course, and the lender is going to look at your overall credit worthiness. But there's no restrictions on out of country people buying real estate in Portugal other than some administrative tax ID and a bank account.
Do they have an equivalent FICO thing over there, FICO score thing for gauging mortgage
I
appropriateness?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
English speaking support. How
Yeah.
difficult is it for you to negotiate life there, language
Surprisingly,
wise?
surprisingly easy. It's easy. It's actually harder to learn Portuguese because so many Portuguese speak English. They see you struggling and they default to English to help you out. So it's kind of hard to get through a conversation with a Portuguese person in like a retail shop or a grocery store or whatever because they want to be helpful and they want to make it easy for you. And so they'll switch to English. So I've had plenty of conversations where I'm kind of pawing through Portuguese and they're responding in English and I just kind of stick to my guns and stay in Portuguese. Um, but we've been taking language classes since April last year, so we're about 15 months of language class, and I think I can. We're okay, we're mediocre, I'd say. Being in the business and going through real estate deals, having to translate every day. I try to do all of the deals in Portuguese in over WhatsApp and text and then we get in person, then we speak English. So that's been a big, it's been very helpful in learning the language.
But when you go into the supermarket or when you go to the market, period, you don't have any difficulty negotiating life, language
No,
wise.
going to the grocery store, going through the restaurant, going to the cafe, going to the gym, we're taking an Uber, all those kinds of things. We've got that basic level of language down, so that's very comfortable. And but then if you go to a government thing or a medical thing, that's when you're like, okay, just forget it. I'm just going to do English here.
Got it. Michael, I come over to Lisbon today. I meet with you. You take me around. I make a decision today to buy a piece of property, to buy a unit.
Yeah.
Uh, you go out and negotiate. How long does it normally take for that sale to go through and for me to take possession? How many weeks on the average, if there is one?
So I'm buying a house right now in Azeitão, which is about 30 minutes south of Lisbon. We've been renting in Lisbon for the first year as we explored all the different country. We wrote a cash offer, a 30-day close, and the seller needed more time. That was too fast for them because as part of the deal, most of the seller, when you put your down payment money down, you actually wire that to the seller. You're not putting in an escrow. So the seller has that money, and then they go and take that money and go buy something else with it and use that for down payment to facilitate their transaction. So there's not this waiting period or this kind of um, um, I forgot the word. When you finance a purchase with you double your financing in the U.S. We used to do it all the time. But you actually have cash, and so the seller usually is living in the house when they go to sell it, and they need to get out of there. So to do a 30-day or 15-day transaction, I guess you can't do faster than 14 days. Most cash deals are 30 or 60 days. Most financing deals are 60 to 90 days.
Got it. Two more questions, then we'll take a break and answer some of these questions that are piling up from the audience.
So many.
Condos versus single family homes. What's the
Yeah.
percentage?
I'd say depends on where you're going to be. So if you're in the city, it's going to be very in Lisbon or Porto or a downtown area. It's going to be really hard to find a single family. It's a very dense. They've really taken urban development um, to heal, and most of the buildings are 4 to 8 stories tall. Most of them are condos, apartments, and to find a single family in Lisbon, it's probably going to be a palace or an estate of some significant proportion. As you go, get outskirts, 30 minutes or so of town, you're going to find a lot of single family homes. Kind of like starting to get into suburbs. And then when you go out even further, you're now looking at country homes with land and estates, and they call them quintas, where you might have a hectare or a half a hectare, which is 2.5 acres is a hectare. And so we looked at 4 hectares up in the mountains, and it was this 10-acre property, had 200 olive trees on it, had a mini golf course. It was incredible. It's a little too far for us, 2.5 hours outside of the city in Castelo Branco. So we still wanted to be close to the city. Just for reference, a 2-bedroom condo in Lisbon is probably in the 5 to 700K range. Three
How many
bedrooms.
square feet? How many square feet? Rough.
You're probably 100 meters, so it's roughly 1,000 square feet, something like that. Um, we're buying a house in Azeitão for 575. It's a 5 bedroom, 2,000 square foot house with pool, orchard, garden, all that stuff. And so it just depends on just like anywhere in real estate, the further away from the middle, the core, it just
Right.
gets you get more for your money. Same thing here.
From an investment viewpoint, which is better, single family or unit, or does it make any difference?
Well, so Lisbon's appreciated about 17% in the past year. And so most of those are going to be condo sales. I haven't ridden a downturn here yet. So I know in the US, single families typically hold their value longer or are more resilient in a comeback, slower to drop and faster to come back in a market change. Um, in Lisbon, Porto, there's just not many single family homes to begin with in the city center. And just like anywhere, the core city is going to be the most resilient of any part of a real estate market. So all the restaurants are here, all the metro is here, everything is here, businesses and jobs. So I don't know if it's different. It's very different, Alf, than the US with single families versus condos.
Would you recommend if somebody's thinking of coming to live in Portugal, either full time or part time, would you recommend that they rent first to sort of get the feel of the place and then buy?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
We recommend that to all our clients. I would rather them get here, have a landing pad, use this first year to explore where you want to be. It's not a huge country, but it is very diverse. It's about the size of Indiana, about a quarter the size of California. So you can explore the whole country, in 6 months or a year very comfortably, and then figure out where you want to be. There's different costs in all across the country, different lifestyles, different weather, and different communities too. So I think moving across the planet is way different than moving across town or even moving from state to state, where you might be more comfortable buying, within an area you're not familiar with. Here, I think there's just too many unknowns. You might not even like Lisbon. You might not even like Portugal, right? And so it would not be
So
wise to
rent
buy.
first.
Yeah, I think it's just safer. Why why
Michael,
why rush it?
let's pull up the question. I've got another hour's worth of questions here, but I want to get some of
Yeah,
these
so many good
quickly, one
questions.
word answers, if I may. Uh, Tina says, what jobs are available to Americans who don't work remotely? Do Portuguese look down on hiring expats? We talked about the language barrier before. Jobs available,
I
non-remote?
think I would probably not move here if you needed to have a job that you didn't have one already. I would
That's all I
recommend getting a
need.
job and then getting a work from home or work remote job and then moving here.
Do the Portuguese look down on hiring expats?
Depends on the job. Tourism is going to be a lot easier. There's a lot of call centers here. Not the sexiest job, but there are a lot of call centers here. They look for fluent English speakers. And tourism is a
Golden
really big deal here.
Golden Visa program. Any updates?
I don't know, depending on what relative time period, but I think 2 years ago or so they changed it pretty significantly. You used to be able to buy your way into a citizenship. Now but with real estate, you could buy a $500,000 euro house, and 5 years later you get your citizenship. They've removed the real estate piece. They now have moved it to an investment vehicle. If you spend 250 or 500,000 euros in either a cultural investment, a business that employs 10 or more people, some kind of arts or research, science or research, that would count for your golden visa. And then in 5 years, I think you only have to visit for a week once a year. That would contribute to allowing you to get your citizenship currently.
Okay. HOA fees, any?
Yeah, they're pretty low. Most of the buildings that we see are anywhere from 25 to 75 euros a month.
Okay. I close a deal. I pay my escrow or my deposit directly to the seller. The seller backs out. Any security? Do I get my money back?
Seller owes you twice the deposit if they back out. If you back out,
By
you lose your
law?
deposit
By
by
law.
law.
Okay. We talked about that. How many sales are you completing on average in a month?
So I'm the new guy, so I'm probably the wrong guy to ask. I'm also doing a lot of leases, and so I'm closing anywhere from 4 to 5 deals a month, but they're really heavily on leases because I've been focused on that to really get to know the market, know the inventory, know the neighborhoods, and all that stuff. I closed my first sale last month. I've got 3 new buyers that I think we're going to get an escrow this month. So my team, however, is closing anywhere, from 5 to 10 deals a month. They've been at it for 7, 10 years.
A long time. As an American, is it easy to set up my own business in Portugal?
I'd say so. It's different. I hired an accountant and he did everything, and I have what's really interesting is you have to invoice through the federal government. And so if you want to send an invoice to someone, you log into the federal government's finance portal and you send it through that. And so that's wildly different than what we do in the US. But setting it up is I think I paid $150 and now I have it.
Okay. Question here, are you familiar with any new developments coming up south of Lisbon?
Yes. Send me an email.
Okay. That was Gina asked that. Gina, send Michael, and we'll put his email address up at the end. Do you know if ownership is safe? Deeds, title insurance?
No title insurance, but the deeds are very very rigid, very strong. The laws are designed to protect property owners. If there's an issue, then there's a process to get it resolved. But unlike title insurance, where it becomes the title insurance company's problem, you now have to deal with that.
Okay. Question I was going to ask later on was just updating and refurbishing the property. You see a lot of these older units obviously need work to bring them up to sort of the standards we're used to. How difficult is that? Just in terms of contractors, architects, etc.
Depends on who you're working with entirely, just like in the US. I think, when you hear about laid back lifestyle, that applies to tradespeople too. It's there's a lot of words that mean very similar things. See you later and see you tomorrow is kind of the same word. And so that doesn't necessarily translate into strict deadlines. And so that can be frustrating. I think if you're looking at flipping as a business, there are tax incentives for flipping as opposed to tax penalties in the US. So if you are able to roll over a property and you buy a property, improve it, and then sell it, you get tax incentives for that, as opposed to penalties for doing a quick flip in the US. So different. But it's really important to have those relationships with the contractors. It's critical.
I'm redoing a kitchen right now, and it's like having a colonoscopy and a root canal at the same time dealing with contractors. Is it as difficult over there as it is here?
Yeah.
It is.
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. I wouldn't recommend trying to manage a project from afar, for sure.
Be prepared.
Sure. Be prepared.
Who typically pays the agent fees?
Same as, seller usually pays both sides. There's no question of the buyer being asked to pay unless there's some really weird circumstance. Then our settlement hasn't affected Portugal at all.
Okay. Question here, what bank would you recommend for transferring money to Portugal? What's the tax liability?
There's 7 or 8 banks in Portugal. They're highly regulated by the government. I had a client that used Millennium Bank recently. They had a really, really, really good experience. Easy to set up an account, easy to move around, easy to get the checks for their payment. We use Novo Banco. My husband had a very easy experience. I, as self-employed president of my company, that was very much a head turner. They couldn't figure that one out. And so it took me several months to get my bank account set up. So I would probably recommend for Millennium.
Okay. Let's talk about rentals quickly. And you facilitate leases, I believe, yes?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are the question is, what are the gotchas in renting in Portugal? What do you need to look out for?
So there's the law, and then there's what landlords ask, and they're not always in congruence. So the law says that the max you can ask for down payment and prepaid rents is 2 months of deposit and 2 months of prepaid rents. Sometimes they'll ask for a year or 6 months, and so there's not a very effective enforcement mechanism for saying no, you can't do that. And so every now and then we give more than we want to make the deal happen. But usually we can stick to our guns and say, hey, the law's 2 and 2. And usually we can get it through. There's also this thing called a guarantor that pops up a lot. Sometimes a Portuguese landlord, especially dealing with a foreigner, doesn't want to have their lease be dependent on foreign income. And so they'll ask for somebody, a Portuguese citizen, to guarantee the rent. And that means you need to be friends with somebody here that will sign their commitment to pay the rent if you don't. And so that's a very difficult ask. And so we usually skip those properties unless the client really, really, really wants it. If they really, really, really want it, then you can go to a bank and the bank can act as a guarantor. They charge a fee for it. It's kind of a rigmarole, but those come up a lot. And then the other issue is you're not guaranteed to get appliances. So oftentimes appliances are included. That's the furnished kitchen. And light fixtures are really the tenant's responsibility. That's a wild one for me. So you'll often see properties with no light fixtures. Where do light fixtures go? You supply your own light fixtures.
Michael, are you paying US taxes and Portuguese taxes?
Depending on where the income is made, yes, but they don't double tax you. So Portugal and US have a tax treaty that if one taxes you, the other won't, which is great because you're not paying double taxes. But where it gets really tricky is if you're moving here and you have an investment property or a primary residence, which comes with tax benefits of 1031 or a primary residence exemption to 250, 500. Portugal looks at those as taxable events. So one of the reasons we sold all our real estate in the US when we moved here is because 1031 would not apply. They see that as, oh, you're not getting taxed on this. You made 150 grand or whatever. We're going to tax you a capital gains rate on that. And then our primary residence in San Francisco, we had 500,000 or more in capital gains. And so we were like, well, shoot, we don't want to pay taxes on that. So we sold that in the US before we became tax residents. And we were able to take advantage of the US tax exemption before Portugal knew we existed over here in the tax department. But
So
otherwise, they're not double taxed.
So I migrate to Lisbon. I live there permanently. That's my sole source of life. But I'm collecting Social Security. Am I taxed on that Social Security by Portugal? Do you know?
I am not collecting Social Security, so I don't know that.
Okay, not a problem.
Not yet.
We're running out of time here. I want to talk about cultural and lifestyle factors.
Yeah.
First of all, let's stay in Lisbon itself right now. By the way, you're negotiating properties elsewhere, the Algarve, etc. You're not just Lisbon only, correct? With your brokerage?
Brokerage is everywhere. Yeah, for sure. We're the second largest in the country. But personally, my expertise is the Lisbon and surrounding areas.
All right. Sophistication of the cities in terms vis-a-vis what we're used to in San Francisco: services, dining, the arts community, performing arts, retail, police, sanitation. What's it like?
I would say it's better than the US in all those regards. Retail,
Really?
Amazon does not have a fulfillment center in Lisbon or in Portugal. Everything comes from Spain, and so it takes a couple days to get here. So it's much, much faster and to go to just walk around down the street and buy something. The retail culture is incredibly strong here. There's a bunch of really big malls that are filled with stores and people and everything. They're not converting any malls to residences here. They're actually bringing in amazing stores, and it's really kind of cool. Food-wise, fantastic food. You've got all the European influence here. Portuguese food is my favorite food in the world now. I've become incredibly a big fan of it. And you get Italian and French and Spanish and everything. Brazilian is big influence here. So you get a really great mix of good foods. Hard to find Mexican food. I'll be honest with you about that. It's hard to find good Mexican food. There's some attempts at it, but it's not the same. And medical is fantastic.
Talk about medical. Do they accept American insurance? American
no,
or Medicare?
No. You need your own. But most of your medical care, if you're going through this, the state program is free or very, very, very low cost. And if you go through private insurance, you might get a faster service, but it's not going to be a lot cheaper. So you get private insurance as an expat when you move here because you have to, and you can sometimes get faster service. But I have a couple my husband and I have pre-existing conditions. We have to go to the state service, and it's actually fantastic. It's very fast. We schedule appointments, and it might be 3 or 4 weeks out, but the doctors are top notch. They know more about my conditions than my San Francisco doctor did, which I was shocked. And it's not very
So,
it's not a lot of frills, right? Your doctor doesn't wear Manolo Blahniks, and they're not driving $400,000 sports cars. It's very different. It's socialized medicine. Everybody is entitled to medical care, regardless of who you are,
and the level is comparable to what you got in the Bay Area.
for sure, for
Okay.
sure.
What were you paying for that private insurance monthly when
I
you
think
arrived?
I think we paid 4,000 a year,
A year.
and
Okay.
I think we were paying 1,000 a month in the
Hospitals are
U.S.
good. Hospitals are
Hos-
good.
Hospitals are great. Hospitals are actually there's the public and the private hospital, or they're not the same. But if you have like an emergency, you're going to the public hospital. If you have a heart attack, or something tragic happens, you're going to the public hospital, because
Right.
that's where the best doctors are, and the most emergencies for services are. If you have this skin thing and you want to check it out and you're wondering, you're worried about it, you're not sure what it is, probably going to a private doctor, because it's not an emergency and you can get in there at your leisure.
Environmental issues quickly, Michael. Smog, traffic, noise. Better, worse.
Their environmental standards are higher than the US. Their food safety is higher. They don't allow us to eat a lot of things they do allow in the United States. So I feel better about what we eat here. Traffic kind of sucks if you're in the city. We Uber or take the metro. We don't have cars in the city. Parking is a nightmare, absolute nightmare in our neighborhood. But if you're outside of the city, it's not. It's just like any other normal suburbs. Um, there's in Lisbon, there's an airport literally on the edge of town, and it bisects the flight path runs right over the middle of the city. So that's kind of annoying. But the walls are also a foot thick concrete, and all the windows are double or triple pane. So you rarely hear them flying overhead unless your windows are wide open, and then you definitely hear them.
You talk to your husband and you decide what you're going to do for dinner tonight, and you have to go out and buy the groceries on your way home. Are you going to an open air market? Are you going to a supermarket like a Safeway? How does that happen?
They have all of those. So they've got the neighborhood little corner shop. They've got the mid-sized grocery store, and they've got the hyper marts, they call them, which are big as Sam's Club, and they have everything you can imagine. But even the mid-sized grocery stores in the neighborhood, they all have fresh bread. They have a deli. They have a fish market. They have a meat market. They've got fresh cheeses. We're not wanting for food at all whatsoever.
Okay. Climate, what's the climate like sort of over the course of 52 weeks?
I would say Lisbon is a lot like LA. It's warm summers and mild winters. Um, Porto is more like Seattle and Portland, where it's going to rain more in the winter. It's going to be a little cooler, and then the summers are going to be pretty mild, lovely. And then Algarve is more like Florida, I would say, where it's a little hotter. It's pretty much vacation wonderland all year round.
Okay. Friendliness of the locals, particularly the bad press the US is getting globally now. How do they treat you?
With a lot of sympathy. They're actually quite the I've had many conversations with folks about this, and there's other two regards there. Either one is uh US is not trustworthy as a global partner. Um, they don't have anything against Americans. It's the American government that is really rustling everybody's feathers. And the other kind of lens is, now you know what we've been through, right? Now you understand what we've been through. We went through a dictatorship. We went through an
With Salazar,
autocracy. We
right?
went through Salazar in Portugal, or any of the other, epic governmental
Okay.
experiments of the past 1,000 years in
But
Europe.
but you're
So
not noticing any rudeness or anything, any overt antagonism against.
none
Okay.
whatsoever.
Expat community, how big in Portugal?
It's super easy. It's huge, huge. Facebook is a great place to meet lots of expats. I'm in a ton of gay expat groups in Lisbon and Setúbal and all over the place. There's a lot of meetups that happen. What's the surprising thing about moving here was how easy it was to make friends. In that everybody's in the same boat. Nobody has their set friend group already, and they're trying to be isolationist. So I don't need new friends. I've already got my friends, or nobody has their own friends here. And so everybody's starting from scratch, sort of. And that makes it really easy to meet people, go out for dinner or drinks with people you barely know, because everybody's in the same boat.
I'm going to throw out some names to you. Tell me if they're there. Is Netflix there?
Yep,
Amazon is not.
it is. It just takes a little bit longer. You can't get same day delivery, but you can get it.
The product what comes from the US
Comes from
or from
Spain
somewhere in Europe?
or UK, Spain or the UK, mostly Spain.
Home Depot, no.
No, but there's hardware stores equivalents. They're actually kind of Bed
Costco,
Bath and Beyond and Home Depot combined.
Costco,
Costco, no.
no. Okay. What American names would we recognize? Anything come to mind? Not important.
No, not really. Not
Um,
many.
so
Like
you make
brands,
it,
Nike and
yeah,
brands are
yeah.
here, but retail stores are all off the top of my head different.
Okay. So you make a decision today. You and your husband make a decision. You want to put new countertops in your kitchen.
Yeah.
How hard is it to do that tomorrow?
Tomorrow, pretty hard. I think getting folks to come out and give you bids is a process. Getting them actually respond to the bid is a process, and then getting them scheduled is a process. So each of those are like mini projects. Unless you're hiring a contractor that you already know, we're going through that now, and finding somebody to do our hardwood floor replacement is I feel like I need a full-time job to do that.
All right. Michael, we're coming to the top of the hour. Let's wrap this up. Low-hanging fruit. I'm thinking of coming to Lisbon to join you, and it's sort of part retirement. It's part, I want to live in Europe, but it's also I want to make an investment. What's the
Okay.
low-hanging fruit? Do I come to Lisbon? Do I go to Porto? If I come to Lisbon, what's the low-hanging fruit if there is low-hanging fruit?
Low-hanging fruit, as in like the best deals, best
The best deal.
opportunities.
I tell you what, I'm going to bring $700,000 with me, which by San Francisco standards is poverty, but I've got 700,000 in cash.
I would probably recommend buying a condo in the city center. It's always going to be rentable. You would actually want to come and visit if you're not moving here permanent full time. You would want to come and visit. You would not be able to short-term rental it. You're not be able to do an Airbnb necessarily unless you buy one that already has a license. That you can transfer licenses, but you can't really convert new ones. There's too many Airbnbs on the market right now. So, but if you're going to rent it out long term or just use it as a pied a terre, I would recommend getting something in the city center, relatively, where you can walk to stuff, easy to get from the airport. It'll hold its value over the long haul, and you'll love it.
Michael, can you type quickly your email address into the chat button down the bottom because I'm getting a lot of questions that can be handled by email between you and our audience. We're running out of time here, but if you could
Yeah, I
put that
do.
into the chat button.
If I could make one plug real quick,
Yeah,
anybody that's oh,
please go
uh,
ahead.
yeah, we have a video series on the buying process. So if you're curious at all or have clients that are curious, they can sign up for my video newsletter at portugalstepbystep.com. And every week,
Slowly, portugalstepbystep.com. Got it.
yeah, yeah, portugalstepbystep.com. And that'll deliver to your inbox once a week. You can go on my YouTube channel from there and look at them all at once if you want. And then here's my contact info.
And there's your email down the bottom, Michael Minson at kwportugal.pt. Fantastic.
Yep.
Leave that up while we're talking
Yeah.
briefly. How does the referral process, if I'm an agent, if I'm a realtor in San Francisco and I refer a client, is there any referral fee? And I mean, obviously
Yep.
talking legally, how does that
Yeah.
work?
Same as it does in the US. It's just there's no real enforcement mechanism, so it's really a trust issue. We'll take the forms that you use, whether the KW form or CAR form or whatever. We'll take those forms and we'll honor them just like we would any other integrity relationship. But if you send a referral to some deadbeat agent and they go disappear on you, it's really hard to enforce.
Michael,
But
how
we will
many hours?
absolutely honor our referrals.
How many hours ahead are you in Lisbon to us in San Francisco?
8 hours.
Okay, so be careful about calling him at 3 a.m. in the morning. Parting advice. I want three quick headlines. Parting advice. I'm on the fence, but I've been impressed by today's call and I'm thinking about doing it. What's the
Yeah.
parting advice?
I'm happy to have a one-on-one call with you and my husband and your partner, and we just talk through, our experience, answer all your questions. It's an easy one. I would also recommend visiting for sure. If you haven't visited, come here on vacation. A lot of people call it a scouting trip, where they look at neighborhoods, and we can go out and I can show you all kinds of stuff, not just the touristy stuff. You can do that on your own, but I can show you the neighborhoods that really work well for what your lifestyle is and price point and all that stuff. And then uh, hire an attorney, an immigration attorney, if you do decide to do it. You don't need one. You can absolutely do it on your own, but it just takes a ton of stress off your plate and a ton of worry. And you've got somebody to call and ask the questions about what's happening to this, and I don't understand that. You can do it on your own. It's not rocket science. The second time, probably no brainer. I would do it on my own. First time, I hire an attorney. I can give you some connections if you like.
And final question though, but psychologically, inside your mind, what's the key factor in deciding I'm going to go or I'm not going to go? If there, I mean, that's simplistic, but
It is and it's not. I think it's important that you again know what you're running to. Make sure you're not being cognizant about, are you running from something? And if you are running from something, that could very well be very valid, especially what's going on right now in the US. But make sure that what you're running to is going to be a better life, better for your family, and that you're not just trying to escape something. Because if you have a problem in the US, it's probably going to follow you to Portugal, and it's not going to go away just because you've changed your environment.
and life in Europe is good, yes?
Great. It's great.
Okay.
It's great.
Michael, we have to stop there. We're right at the top. Again, I'll be sending out a link this afternoon. Look, and if you don't get it, look in your spam folders or your junk files. It'll be from Eventbrite. It'll be called a Lux Stream, and it will have a link to the Zoom recording for today. And you can click on that link. It'll take you to our YouTube channel. You can watch this program many times over. Michael, I want to thank you very, very much for today. This is a great program. We could have talked for another 2 hours with a lot of the nitty gritty, but we covered a lot of ground. And I really am appreciative of the fact that we had you on, because you know us in the Bay Area and now you know Portugal. You don't get a twofer too many times. So thank you for doing that. To our audience, pleasure to have you today. And we'll have more of these programs. We may do more in a similar vein to this. So with that, we are adjourned. Happy selling. And Michael, ciao to you, and we'll talk
Muito
again.
obrigado. Muito obrigado. Ciao, ciao.
Thank
Boa
you.
tarde.
Bye bye.